Krystal Ball, the ball one herself. I came across Krystal Ball when she was running in an election and she failed out because of pictures that I didn't see anything wrong with, but at the time took her out of the election. Krystal Ball, after failing miserably in that election, ends up parlaying that into a gig where was in media. And she did it very well. So well, in fact, that she was able to leave Rising and go to her own show. After going to her own show, I didn't see her as much, but every so often she'd pop up on something that she was saying. Now, in all honesty, I've always liked Krystal Ball. Even in videos that I've done in the past where I disagree with her, I typically liked her. This comment, however, is absurd. It's slanderous. Tim Pool should sue you for it. It's that bad. And I'm reacting that bad. Look, I was in bed and it bugged me that much where I have a show at 7 a.m. and I drag my ass out of bed to make this commentary on this because that's how egregious it was. She comes out and not just egregious, it's hypocritical on its face. And in fact, it's worse than hypocritical because what she's accusing him of is not true. What I am saying, that she was a shameless propagandist on MSNBC, self-admitted shameless propagandist on MSNBC, which is what she's effectively accusing Tim Pool of, which wasn't true. I'm going to get into it for a moment, but I want to show the comment that has annoyed me so greatly. She was in a back and forth with Cenk Uygur. I got to be honest, I don't even know what they were talking about. I don't even care. And in the middle of it, she says,
on a lot of
So the mainstream media guys are the worst liars in the world. They lie way worse than even right-wing media.
I don't know about
that. Okay, we can have that discussion. I think you cannot find two bigger liars in America than Joe Scarborough and Whoopi Goldberg.
I mean,
okay?
But I hear you. But I also have been kind of blackpilled on a lot of independent media because that tenant media situation where, you know, Tim Pool and whoever else were taking random sketchy money to put out whatever propaganda they were told to put out. I just, you know, I don't see what has grown up on the right in.
So what she's referring to is the situation where they found out that the Russians had put $20 million in a company. Tim Pool and the people who were involved in that were on the right. None of them knew that the Russians were involved in it. None of them knew. And so if none of them knew, how is it altering and affecting their content? It was stupid for the Russians to do it. Talk about a waste of money, putting it in some right-wing corporation. But that's kind of besides the point. I'm saying that they didn't know that that money was going in. And that Democrats and people on the left have used that as a vector in which to hit people that have been on the right, despite the fact that they didn't know where the money was coming from. It was unclear. It was undisclosed. It's like you get a job, you have investors, you take the money from investors. I don't see how that's different than the Young Turks that takes money from, you know, whatever Democratic sources. And Krystal Ball is a very special case on this. Like, it is breathtakingly hypocritical for her to say something like this. And I'm annoyed by this. I will go into why I'm annoyed by this. This is not a defense of Tim Pool. I don't like Tim Pool, so it's not a defense of Tim Pool. On some level, I think it's a defense of myself because I worked at Sputnik. And I know how that operation operated. And I had far more freedom than Krystal Ball had when she was on MSNBC being a shameless propagandist for the Democratic Party, a self-admitted shameless propagandists for the Democratic Party. There are stories after stories after stories about people being managed in MSNBC in regards to the stories that they could cover, even the things that they could say. So the notion, after being paid, and understand, when you are a host on MSNBC and there's a Democrat in office, you effectively state media. The Democratic Party is one of the legs, the vestiges of this government. Being a part of it is being part of state media. That's not what Tim Pool did. That's nowhere near what he did. That's nowhere near what I did. My job was only to be honest. But besides the point, I want to nail this down. Krystal Ball was on Joe Rogan. And I want you to hear what she says in this clip.
I did a monologue when Hillary Clinton was building up to run for president. It was back in 2014. So this was early on. And I did this whole thing that was like, she's sold out to Wall Street. People are going to hate this lady. She's like the terrible candidate for the moment. Please don't run. And I was allowed to say it, right? I delivered my thing. I did it exactly how I wanted to do it. Afterwards, I get pulled into an office and, great monologue, everything's fine. But next time you do any commentary on Hillary Clinton, it has to get approved by the president of the network. Yeah. And think about, I would love to say that I did further Hillary Clinton commentary. There's no doubt about it. But I would love to say that didn't affect me and I was just there to be a truth teller. But listen, I'm a human being. I'm sure I responded to the incentives of that system of like, I don't want to get in trouble with the boss.
For sure.
And that's the way that it works. People, that's a very blatant example, but oftentimes people know where the boundaries are.
So let me get this straight. You were on MSNBC, you did a monologue, you were slapped down for that monologue. And who do you think they slapped you down for? Do you think that the network just did it because they did it? Or do you think that the network is a propaganda arm of the Democratic Party every bit as much as Fox News is a propaganda arm of the Republican Party? You admitted yourself that you knew where the boundaries were, that you wish you could be a truth teller. But, you're a human being. And being a human being, you had to function within the context of the system to which you were operating, which was a Democratic Party propaganda piece. Shameless, self-admitted propagandists for the Democratic Party. Non-truth teller, as you pointed out yourself. And yet you're attacking Tim Pool. And you're disparaging all of those other people who, again, did not know where the money was coming from, and they were just doing their content. I'm pointing out that they had far more freedom in doing their content than you did at MSNBC as you gave propaganda to lemmings, cultists of the Democratic Party and the other blue no matter who've effectively weakened the party today. It is astonishing that you would sit there and throw that slander out. And you feel comfortable throwing it out because that is, the Russian threat is one of those things that continuously comes out of left-wing media, brain-dead left-wing media at that. It's nonsense. I wish people could get past that. You are being propagandized to with a Hillary Clinton and a Trump derangement syndrome of this, Trump is working with the Russians. The Russians is a threat. You will be best suited to dealing with the issues that are affecting you in your country because it's not a foreign threat that is the biggest threat to our existence right now. Full stop. It is easy to disparage them for that because, again, they're right-wingers. You wanted to make a point about right-wingers, and this is an easy throwaway line to do that. But are you really in a position to do that? considering what you admitted to on Joe Rogan. And by the way, it's not just her. It's meaning she's not the only one that gets managed. This is Ed Schultz. Ed Schultz used to be on MSNBC also. Listen to what he says here.
Well, I appreciate the question. This is the best job I've ever had in my 42 years of broadcasting. It's the best company I've ever worked for. It's the most freedom I've ever had. And I have really grown on the level of international knowledge and foreign relations, which has been very career rewarding. I've been able to travel the world. I've been able to interview
with RT.
Been able to interview numerous people from different countries that have a totally different perspective than what Americans have. I'm doing real journalism. It's not opinion. I anchor the news. I facilitate a discussion, and I enjoy this role very much. It's really been a real pleasure working here for the last 2.5 years, and I really don't know when I'm going to give it up. I'm enjoying it that much.
Well, let me ask you, Ed.
But let me go back, if I may, because you said, what are the differences?
Yes.
And I want to make this very clear, and I hope your audience consumes this. There was more oversight and more direction given to me on content at MSNBC than there ever has been here at RT. And I think that it's very sad that that story is not getting out. I think it's many times I was told what to lead with on MSNBC. Many times I was told what I was not going to do. And I've got a story that had I not been involved in it, I would have never believed it. And Phil Griffin, who I consider a friend to this day, was a watchdog, far more than anything I'm exposed to here at RT America.
Did he tell you what to say? Did he tell you an angle to take?
Often.
I mean, that's damning, right? Meaning it's not just Krystal Ball that was managed in that way. And again, who do you think they were managing you for? Do you think it was just, for shits and giggles? Or do you think they were doing it for a higher objective, the higher objective being working arm in arm with the Democratic Party? I mean, for God's sake, the notion that you could attack him in that way when you are that vulnerable from your past experience, going through an organization that is functionally and fundamentally managed. That's astonishing. You were a shameless, paid propagandist for the Democratic Party, working on MSNBC, self-admitted paid propagandist, shameless, working at MSNBC. And last point, this one, Cenk Uygur himself. Uygur, on leaving MSNBC network, told me to tone it down, didn't want to challenge power. I remember this because I remember when Cenk Uygur was talking about it on the show, and he pointed out that he got called into a room and they effectively told him, hey, we need you to tone it down. We don't like you going after them that much. Uygur pointed out that his ratings and everything was good, and yet he was also being managed. Uygur ends up leaving, though, because he didn't want to be managed, and he goes on the Young Turks and does his thing. I'm just pointing out that paid propagandists shouldn't throw stones at somebody who she believes was a paid propagandist, but ultimately wasn't. Even if he was, you have no room to talk. That's my point. What people get about Sputnik and RT wrong is that whatever it is on the Russian channels, on the American channels, those people are just Americans. And those people just have that point of view. And having that particular point of view, the objective is just Be honest. Just tell the truth. Your government has gotten so corrupt across the board. And so has media in regards to its relationship with that government, especially on issues of foreign policy. Ed is perfectly right. When you're working on the network, you're getting a world perspective because you're not covering news just in America. You're covering it in China, India, South Africa. If something happened anywhere over the globe, you may be sent to cover that event. That gives you a certain point of view of the world that, I'm sorry, an American point of view is a biased and somewhat jaded point of view. And so our job was just be honest, give context to what is happening so the public can on some level understand the issue in a deeper way. The reason that the government doesn't like that is because ultimately they are fundamentally corrupt. When they are talking about things overseas, especially dealing with countries that are our enemies, they lie. They lie often. And bringing reality to that or larger context to that, you can still go whichever way you want. But there's nothing wrong with giving context. It is our job. It's what media is supposed to be, not necessarily be lapdogs that are led around to one war after the next or being positioned at one enemy after the next, when these things really aren't your enemy or the root of the problem. Yes, it's a defense of myself on some level because I worked at Sputnik. I'm just pointing out that a paid propagandist, shameless, self-admitted, has no room to talk. And I would guarantee you, I had far more freedom to just give my point of view than Ball ever had at MSNBC, as she was shamelessly propagandizing to her audience on behalf of the Democratic Party. Paid, shameless. Did I say shameless and paid? I hope Tim Pool sues you for slander. Like, share, and of course, subscribe. Thanks all.